So if you're a creator looking to outsource your video editing and hire a video editor, there are a few things you should know in order to make that working partnership really work. So you see, the problem is that most creators go into the first video editor relationship with the wrong expectations. So what this means is that it's usually because as creators, we have a really vague understanding of what we want for our content. But if we're not able to correctly articulate that to our potential editor, you're going to be losing both time and money. You see, most creators don't really understand the right process for working with the editor. So when something feels off, they automatically assume that outsourcing their video just wasn't for them, or they don't know how to do it correctly. And in reality, the issue is always just pretty much misaligned expectations. So if this is your first time on my channel, my name is Ramses. I've been working as a professional editor for over 10 years now. Over these 10 plus years of working with creators and brands on their video editing has taught me a few things. And one of the most important is that if you don't have a clear system at the start of your editing partnership, it makes it much harder for your editor to take your assets and give you results that you want. So even the best video editor, the most technically gifted in the world, will have a hard time adjusting to your style if you don't have a video editing system already established. So you would actually be surprised how many relatively big creators before I started working with them had no content delegation system in place, or even a repeatable video process for their videos, So as an editor, the simple piece of advice I would give creators looking to publish faster and outsource their video editing is to create a repeatable video editing system. So if you have no idea what that is or how to do that, this video will simplify that for you step by step. So at the start, the first thing to expect when working with a new editor is that the relationship will feel slower at the beginning and not faster. So contrary to popular belief, this actually does surprise a lot of people because they assume that hiring an editor immediately saves time, which yes, that is the eventual outcome, but it is not the instantaneous. And in my experience, the only time where it actually feels instantaneous is if the creator or brand already have a created system in place that is just plug and play and easily repeatable. So the way I think about outsourcing video editing is basically the same way our current understanding of science works. So the entire scientific process exists so that results aren't just random, they're repeatable. So if one scientist runs an experiment and gets a result, that result doesn't really mean anything until other scientists can follow the same steps and replicate the experiment. So that's exactly what most creators struggle with when they hire video editors. So one of the biggest problems isn't that editors are necessarily bad, it's that the process isn't repeatable. And if you hand the same footage to 3 different editors, you'll usually get 3 completely different videos because everybody interprets your style differently. So the goal isn't just to find the perfect video editor with the most technically gifted skills. It's to build the system so clear that anybody can follow it and still produce the same quality and vibe every single time. So your templates, editing presets, naming structures, references, rules, and checklists become the scientific method of your editing workflow. Because once the process is standardized, the results become predictable, scalable, and more consistent. And as a creator, here's the biggest roadblock that you have to overcome. So most creators or even brands don't really have these assets ready. So in the early stages of outsourcing your video editing, the early phase is about alignment and creating this system so your editor can become plug and play into your content. You see, everything in life, including content, are a system. You have a system for getting to work, you have a system for eating, so everything is a system. So it's just a matter of thinking up the system that best fits your content. At the start, the video editor is learning your voice, your pacing, your tolerance for cuts, and your audience's expectations. So the beginning learning curve is normal and necessary. And that is something most creators tend to forget. Again, it does not matter how good your video editor is technically. If you don't have this repeatable system in place, it will be very difficult to land your exact style without multiple rounds of revisions. So just look at it this way. If the first edit feels like it needs more feedback than you expected, it doesn't necessarily mean that it failed. It means that the editing system is currently being built and it's going to become much better later on. So one of my core philosophies when it comes to video editing specifically is that, especially for social media content, is that a professional editor is not trying to inject their personality into your content. They're trying to understand yours and elevate it into something better. And that is not really an easy process. It is something that takes trial and error, and it takes iteration. The more specific your feedback, the faster that alignment happens. So having clear notes about pacing, energy, and priorities speed everything up. So hiring a video editor and outsourcing your content will save you enormous amounts of time. But like with all things at the start, it will require some additional effort to set up the systems in order to make that process as efficient as possible. So here's something I've realized over my 10 years of professional video editing work. And it's a very simple concept, but something most people generally overlook, especially when it comes to creating content and video editing. And that is that nuance and context really matter. You see, many creators do their editing based on emotion, which is amazing. but every single person is their own individual with different upbringing, culture, and identity. It would be unrealistic to expect an editor to have the same identity as you. So that context and nuance really matter when it comes to content. Something people really underestimate is correct culture fit. An editor that understands your content culture will always bring you better results than an editor who is not familiar with your brand's culture. So a great example would be if you're a creator who, for example, creates skateboarding content. So your content culture is skateboarding. But if you hire an editor that is not familiar with skate culture, it will be much harder for them to pick up the context and the nuances that will make your content work. So think about it this way. Great editing is the ability to connect with the humans watching, and missing nuance and context will make it much harder for your content to resonate, no matter how technically gifted or good the editing may be. So in order to create a successful partnership when it comes to video editing, you have to find the editor that understands your content culture. A video editor that understands your content culture will bring you way better results than a highly technical video editor that knows all the fancy tricks in all the softwares but has no understanding or familiarity to your content culture. So I actually believe that this is where the biggest problem comes with hiring the correct video editor for your content. So many creator businesses try to look for the most technically gifted editor who knows how to do the most fancy effects and transitions within the software, but let me let you in on a little secret. It does not matter how good your content may look visually. If your content cannot connect on an emotional level with viewers, it does not matter if you have an extremely technical video. It will not give you the results that you're looking for. So I think this is why simple videos are actually doing so good on YouTube and social media right now. They are simple with simple editing or even no video editing at all, and are pulling in numbers that are crazy because people are able to connect with it. The goal of your content is to get your target audience to engage and really emotionally connect with what you are posting. This is what will give you the results you're looking for, whether it's more subscribers, more brand awareness, more leads, or more sales for your business. So another thing to expect is that your role will change. So you move from being an executor of the content to a director. So instead of asking, how do I cut this? You start asking, what should this feel like? So instead of spending hours in an editing timeline, you spend minutes reviewing and giving feedback. So you go from the person making the cuts in the software to the creative strategist for your content. So this can be an easy transition or a hard one, depending on how well you understand your content and target audience. So this shift can feel uncomfortable at first, especially for creators who pride themselves on being hands-on with their content, but it's also where the leverage does appear. When working with an editor, you should also expect the editor to push back occasionally. So that's why having the right editor is key to this whole thing working. The right editor will question decisions that don't serve the video or your target audience, since they do understand the brand culture that we talked about earlier. So I've always found that the best clients I've worked with have always been open to suggestions and creative feedback. There is no faster way to lose a good editor than by never taking their creative input into consideration. So if an editor says yes to everything without asking questions, that's usually a red flag. So you should always expect transparency around limitations. A professional editor won't promise to do everything. They'll be clear about what's included, what's not, and what requires additional time. That clarity prevents resentment on both sides, and it'll lead to way better content and faster publishing. So creators often underestimate how much better the recordings get once they stop editing. When you're no longer thinking about post-production all the time while recording, all of your brain power goes to just one task, which is the act of creating. So you should still expect to be involved creatively, and outsourcing editing does not mean disengaging from your content. Like, not at all. You still define direction. You still have creative reviews. You still decide what stays and what goes within your content. The difference is you're not doing the mechanical work, and that distinction matters. A lot of times creators sometimes expect editors to read their minds, and that's totally unrealistic. What works instead is treating the relationship like a system that you're building together. So each video adds new data for that system, and each round of feedback sharpens that system. So when an editor understands your style, your brand culture, your videos start to feel more cohesive, and that consistency builds trust with your audience. And consistency is one of the biggest hidden benefits of working with an editor. What I've noticed is that creators who get the most value from editors are the ones who treat the relationship as an investment, not a transaction. They actually are hands-on, they give feedback thoughtfully, they respect editing timelines, and they understand that clarity is a shared responsibility. If you go in expecting magic from your editor and not even contributing, you're pretty much going to be set up for disappointment. If you go in expecting collaboration, you'll likely be surprised by how much lighter the process feels. So working with a professional editor should reduce stress and not add to it. So it should make publishing feel predictable instead of overwhelming. and it should free you up to focus on the parts of creation that actually require your brain power. Alright, great. So I hope you enjoyed the video. And if you need someone to help you execute all of these systems or handle your video editing, apply to work with me down below in the description. I'll help creators make better videos faster through clean editing, clear structure, and systems that respect your time. So the link to apply to work with me is down below. And yeah, I'm looking forward to hearing about your projects, and I'll catch you guys in the next time with another video. And for now, peace.